Hey everyone, James here. In many parts of any hobby that you get, there's always a positive side, but there's also a negative side. Today I want to talk about the negatives to using botanicals in your aquarium. Now, I'm a big advocate of botanicals. I've often mentioned them in my videos. I've done plenty of videos in the past about botanicals, but I think it's also important to answer some of the questions about maybe the negatives to using them. So this is a bit of a list of some of the things that may be a bit of a problem or something that you might want to bear in mind before using those items in your fish tanks. The most common question I get is, do botanicals affect the pH of your water? And the quick answer is yes, it does. Now, this is very dependent on the type of water that you've got and how hard it is or how soft it is. If it's softer water, it tends to affect the pH more, as do many things. When adding, say, fish, for example, into your water, it tends to alter the pH quite a lot, or types of soil that you use or substrates, that type of thing. The harder the water, I've found that there's more of a buffering element, so it causes less issues with pH swings. As with anything in life, it's just being careful what you do. With botanicals, it's going slow, adding one or two smaller pieces, maybe some small leaves or some cones, and seeing how your water parameters are. So constantly testing them and then add more and more gradually. This all depends on your filtration, how much the bacteria is built up in the filter, and how hard the water is. So they're two very big factors to them. So yes, it does affect the pH, but in my experience, it's not something to dramatically worry about. Obviously, you just got to be careful and do your testing and go slow. It's always the most important thing. Another question I often get is, will it cause bacterial blooms? And again, yes, it probably will in certain circumstances. Now, this again depends on how mature your filtration is. It's like when adding fish or too many things to your fish tank all in one go. If your tank is not mature or cycled, then it will cause bacterial blooms. It's just something to be aware of when adding these items to your tank. Another thing to note is sometimes botanicals will have a thing called biofilm appear on them. Now, that's a white kind of fuzzy fur thing that might happen. It sort of happens when people put wood in their aquarium, so that's probably the more common place that you'd know it. But if you add botanicals, sometimes that happens too, so it's nothing to worry about. People tend to panic and freak out when they see something different in their tanks, especially if they've put a piece of wood in the night before and they wake up the next day and the whole piece of wood is covered in white fur. But it's absolutely nothing to worry about. It's a fungus growing on the wood in the water. It's very beneficial to the animals, so if you've got shrimp or fish or little baby fries, they will all graze off this, so it's a very nutritional piece of food. So don't get rid of it. I know it looks a bit aesthetically unpleasing, but it's very helpful to the ecosystem of the aquarium and a great food source there. So another negative is maybe the smell of the water. Sometimes after using botanicals, especially if your aquarium is a few years old, the water tends to start to smell, and that's the decay of all the stuff in there. But most fish tanks smell anyway after a while. It's just all the dirt in the substrate. So it depends on the type of person or hobbyist you are. If you want to keep those substrates absolutely crystal clear and you're using a gravel vac, then obviously that will reduce the amount of smell. If you tend to do what, say I do, for example, and just let the botanicals rot over time and just sort of sit in the substrate to build a really nice healthy substrate, then if you stir that up, it's going to absolutely stink. So it's just something to bear in mind. This next one is an absolute for me. It's boiling your botanicals. The reason why I say you should do so is because they could contain unwanted pests or chemicals that may have been found in the places that these items are located. So most companies that sell these type of items will tend to try and source them in areas where they are completely clear of human intervention or animal or too many animals and stuff. But again, you're in the middle of a woodland area, you're going to get lots of animals there. So it's just a case of, from my personal perspective, is just boil them, and that way you're trying to eliminate any problems that might be contained in those leaves or pods, like urine or pollutants that might be near, especially if you've gone out foraging yourself and you've gone to a local woods and you've picked the leaves up that might be quite close to a road. It's always advisable to go as far away from roads as possible, but you never know, there could be fumes or stuff coming from a car, so it's always best to make sure that they're boiled. Boil the botanicals, pour the water out, So again, a common thing that I think people tend to like to pour the water into their tank once they generate that really nice tannin coloured water, and then pour it straight in the fish tank. But you're kind of eliminating the point of boiling them, because you're supposed to be getting rid of the pests. So get rid of it, then put them in your tank. And leaves especially will have a lot of tannins to give. Many pods do as well, like aldecones, and it will just leach through into your water gradually. So you will still get the black water effect with that tea stained colored water, but it won't be instantaneous like if you were to boil them. But there is life hacks to it. Some people sell tea bags, that sort of stuff, so tannin tea, or you can buy like liquid human in a bottle, which is sort of similar sort of thing. So there's plenty of ways of doing it, but again, it's just being careful with the items that you're collecting. Next one is, they can to some people look unpleasing. Some people would consider having murky coloured water or funguses appearing on their items in their fish tank not very visually pleasant. And to the untrained eye, for example, somebody like a family member or someone who's never seen one of these sort of more natural aquariums could end up making a few comments or wondering why you've got a you know, an aquarium that's brown and smelly or whatever sitting in your room, and as opposed to sort of like the more common generic green, vibrant, planted, crystal clear, pristine water, clear glassed aquariums that you often see sometimes. So there can be a sort of a downside to that, in the sense that, you know, they're not always the most visually pleasing, but I've seen some truly spectacular aquariums that are set up in this way in the past, and you can do it. I think the last one is botanicals. They are organic matter, so they will decay over time. When you do that, sometimes they can create a bit of a mess, especially if you've got fast swimming fish in the aquarium, for example, or corridors that like to dig through the substrate. If those botanicals are breaking down and you're getting all the dirt and you want to leave it on your substrate to enrich it, corridors, for example, are just, they will just sift through all that and just kick it all up. So be prepared for that. It is something that happens with them, but still I feel like it just adds that extra natural thing. I mean, the animals are literally sifting through as they would in the wild, so it's really cool to see that. If you look at the rivers in most places that these animals are from, you will find that the water and the substrates and the riverbeds and all of that will be pretty much similar to what you're trying to replicate in your homes. So it's all part of that process. There are side effects to using botanicals, some more damaging to the water parameters, for example, and some that are just more visual or just not pleasing to the eye. But it's all about how you perceive them. Give it a go, that's what I'd always say. I highly recommend this type of way of building aquariums. You create a more natural environment for your animals. You'll see more natural behaviors from that, better coloring I've seen. You get to see like spawning behaviors, just loads of different things. I mean, it's all about your perception. It's your hobby, your fish tanks, you do what you want with them. But it's just really nice to try this. It's a great alternative to the conventional aquariums that you often see, and probably more in the way that the hobby should be going. But it's again all down to personal perspective. If you enjoyed this video, check out this playlist right here. I have tons of videos on blackwater aquariums that you can check out, some for the very beginners and some just other questions that might have been asked in the past for me. If you want to sign up for the membership scheme, it's down below as well. You get lots of perks to sort of behind the scenes videos, that sort of thing. And until next time, you stay safe.